Hello everyone, thank you so much once again for joining us. So in today's session, we'll be learning about Terraform interview preparation for experience of 3 to 5 years. Okay, so what we are going to cover in today's sessions, as you can see here, such as we will be trying to understand about the state management and handling the resource drift and Terraform workflow and CSD automations, then Terraform workspaces and multi-environment deployments, then Terraform provisioners and meta arguments, dynamic block functions, Terraform multi-provider hybrid cloud deployments, and so much more, right? So here, specifically in this session, we have total 15 plus questions with answers explained for each scenario base. So we will go one by one and understand. All right, so let's get started. So as I mentioned, first thing we will be learning about the Terraform state management and handling drift, or you can mention as a, in my case, it is a resource drift, right? Or you can mention resource drift or maybe a state drift. In my case, it will be state file related. So yeah, let's understand the first questions. This is the topic that we are doing, and this is focused on the Terraform state drift handling. The scenario is like a developer manually deleted an Azure storage account that was originally created using Terraform. During the next pipeline run or Terraform plan or apply fails, how do you handle such Terraform state drift issues? So first we need to understand the situations. So as a developer, what did it was the person has deleted the storage account which was created or managed by Terraform itself. Now that means we need to understand here two things. First thing is a cloud that is already existing the resource in cloud, that is Azure. Second is a state file, where the state file located, right? So because as I mentioned, as it is clearly mentioned, right, it is managing or created through Terraform. That means somewhere you will have a state file, and also the Terraform, whatever your code also will be available, right? Now, whenever in this case, if somebody deleted the storage account manually, then of course, whenever you run the Terraform next time in the next Terraform plan or maybe this thing, though the pipeline will fail. Of course, they will fail. Why it will fail? Because imagine now you have a resource now you created. Um, let's say I don't have a storage account. Let me take example of any other resource, right? Let's say I will take about the manage identity. Now let's say just like a storage account concept. Now this is created using Terraform. Let's say same resource. Somebody is deleted manually means while creation of the storage account or maybe any resource, there will be having a storage like state file will be created. Now what happens now? Why Terraform will fail? Because Terraform will check two things. First thing, Terraform will check the existing resource. That means this particular resource is available in the Azure portal or not. It is not just Azure, it could be any other environment. I mean, cloud platform. It could be Azure or AWS or any other, right? First thing they'll check that. In my case, as I mentioned, it is deleted by somebody, but it was created through Terraform. That means still I would have the state file, right? Now, so whenever I run the Terraform plan, what happens? Terraform will check the state file. Now they will compare whatever you have the infrastructure creator resource in your Azure portal and also in your state file, they will compare it. If these two things are matching, or maybe the resource, whatever the information, if they are able to get fetch the information, then only Terraform will not fail. But in our case, it will fail because in Azure it is not there, in state file it is there. So there is some conflict, right? This is called as a resource drift. Okay, so in this case, how are you going to basically solve this problem? First thing, what we need to understand, as I told you, the state file, we have a information about the state file, I mean storage account. So of course, but in Azure it is not there, so it will fail, right? So that is the common behavior. So what exactly we need to do first thing in order to basically resolve this problem? First thing, you need to run the Terraform plan to verify missing or changes resource. Suppose if you create any resource here, let's say using Terraform, whenever there is any changes, whether it is in a portal or maybe in your portal or maybe in your Terraform, if there is any changes, the changes would be showing as a plan. So example, let me run. Let me maybe use it as Terraform plan. You can type. Why I'm taking back again here. Okay, so they will check now. They will check and whatever changes is there based on the existing resource as well as the Terraform state file, they will compare it. Based on that, they will give they will tell you what changes is there. So let's say once you do a Terraform plan, whatever changes is there, you can now example here. We have not created anything, but then whatever resource going to be created or deleted depends on the resource. In my case, have not created any resource, so nothing to destroy, but you can see what kind of resource is going to be created, right? So this will help you to understand. Let's say one of the resource already created manually, sorry, Terraform, somebody deleted that resource. In this case, then Terraform will show what changes is there also. Okay. Okay. Next, what you do once we get this thing, once we check the changes, then there are depends on your situation now. Whether the same storage account you want to recreate once again from scratch, or you want to manage the existing. The choice is up to you. Imagine now, in our case now, I do not, let's say I want to recreate same storage account because in Terraform, it is the state file is available, but in Azure portal, it is not there, right? But still you're not able to, you're not allowed to create the resource because of the state file. Now, if you want to recreate once again from Terraform, but this thing, then in this case, what we can do for every single this thing, maybe what I can do, I will not, okay, let me create, otherwise if I can maybe show you, it will take some time maybe here. Terraform plan, auto. Let's swear so that maybe I can just swear. Okay, let's not wait this one. Okay, so what we can do is, if you want to basically recreate, so because in the state file it is resized, right? You can remove from the state file so that you can once again recreate the resource from scratch. That is possible. So what, in order to remove the state file, you have to use a Terraform state RM. RM is nothing but remove, and this is the type of the resource. This is a provider name, and also this is a resource type, that is a storage account. This is your local name. How do you get this one? Well, if you want to get these informations, whenever you create any resource, as I told you, in state file, this is called as a Terraform state file, you can see these details. Okay. It is still getting created. Let's create. Right now we are using the concept called a module, right? So as you can see, for each resource is using through module, it will be created. So let's wait for maybe at least a minute or something. Then we can see the changes. I mean, we can see the state file. So then we can see how we can remove the state file as well. I should have created before in advance, but that's okay. Maybe if you go TFVerse file, sorry, not TFVerse, it will be at here, TFVerse file. I need to check what configuration I have defined it. Maybe I think, yeah, I think storage account. Yeah, that's okay. Maybe I will comment it. This virtual machine is not required for now. Maybe you can do. Okay, only one VM, no problem. Only one VM is going to create. That's okay. Okay. So, okay, let's come into the storage account. Let's go here. If you go here under storage account, because we are talking about storage account. So this is the where is that? This one. So how you have to get this thing? This is the storage account, right? This is going to be, let's say, now it is going to create, but let's say it is already created and available in the portal. Let's say somebody created, I mean deleted manually, and you want to recreate the same resource again. Then what we can do is copy this name, that is your local name. Basically this is together known as a resource block, sorry, resource type. Okay, provider name and this is resource type, together we can call as a resource type. That's okay. Okay, so this resource type, and then we can call with this one. But before that, you have to call the resource, I mean Terraform state. Terraform state, you can see the state file of your Terraform. Now you can see right now, still the resource being created, let's say virtual machines and other components are created. Now, okay, now you can see total 14 resources got created. Now we can simply go back to our portal. Maybe we can check it. I think we given some name. Let me check. Resource group, right? So we are creating under some resource group name. I think this is the one, maybe. Okay, there are many resources got created. Here 5 resource depends on the module, right? Because we are using the module for each resource, maybe using a different resource group. Okay, let's come to the point, that is checking the state file, I mean resource. Let me let's say this one, right? This one. Now if you go back here, now if you type Terraform, maybe let me expand this quite a little bit, right? Terraform state, if you put this thing, you can see like this. So try to always use the ls, sorry, lis or ls. Lis you can type, maybe it is l, am I doing wrong? State Terraform, my spelling is wrong, my bad. T-E-R-A, Terraform state lis. Okay, now what we need to understand here, as I told you, this is a state file. Right now we have not configured backend this state file. This state file is stored locally, right? But as I mentioned, this can be configured in your backends also. Just to give you some idea how, if you can see here on the provider side, we have given backends as null. I mean, we have on the provider, we given as Azure RM, but we have not ticked that is like commented, right? This is why it will be considered backend as a local. That means whatever the backends will be stored in your local system only. So if you take a look closely, you can see terraform.tf state, right? This is the state file. Whatever resource got created till now in Azure portal, like 14 resource we are getting, it is got created, right? All these state files created in your JSON format, basically, you can see. So this, see, this can be, we can check this one, but sometime if you see network module, which module it is used, everything, it's in every single resource, you can see details like resource group names, tag number, LO, RDP port, like everything, right? So that's how we can check it. But as I told you, instead of going through all the state file, you simply can type Terraform state list. That will show you how many resource state files are available. That you can check now, right? Let's say the first we have a network security related, then resource group, then subnet, then associations, then everything we can. We are talking about the storage account. Maybe we can check somewhere storage account. Yeah, here storage account, right? Two. Storage account we have two. How we have two is because if you remember, we are using a loop, right? We have a two storage account. This is a one storage account, two storage account. Now this is the reason why you can also confirm in your tier bars. If you go, sorry, here, you can check, right? This is a map. This is a storage account one. This is another storage account. This one, right? So that's how into. Now, if you want to manage or remove this thing, as I told you, you can remove that manually. Let's say if you want to remove, you can do so by removing the pulse, whatever the ID you have, you can with the index number. Okay, that's how we have to remove, and then you can run the Terraform once again. Okay, that's how we can do it. And otherwise, another one, if the resource was manually recreated, use Terraform, reattach it to the Terraform state. So this is one way of doing it. Let's say if this is for this requirement, but imagine now you have a resource that is the same storage account that got created manually, not using Terraform, right? So in this case, we cannot use this process. We have to go with the import commands, Terraform import. But then there is a certain process that we need to follow. First thing is, if you want to basically manage the existing resource that is created manually, if you want to bring to Terraform, so what you need to do, first thing is you need to write the Terraform script for particular resource. In my case, storage account. Let's say in our case, we have already have, so we don't have to create once again. Second thing is a resource that you want to manage. So in my case, let's say if you want to manage one of the resource, let me take one example. This resource, let's say I want to bring it to Terraform, means there is a JSON, go to JSONs, go to this, get this resource ID, copy entirely. Then for every single resource, right, in Terraform, there will be a documents. So documents, let's say what we can do is storage account Terraform if you type. So as we are referring the Terraform storage account related. Now it could be any other resource, right? If you come till down here, you can use the Terraform import and particular resource type. This resource type, then the subscription details. Okay, if you copy like that, Terraform import Azure RM, whatever the local name is there, then subscriptions. You basically you have to map them. How can you? Let me maybe show you in the things. It will be quite easy. How can I map that? Let's say I have copied the ID. This is from the Azure portal. I have copied this one from where? Here, resource ID I got. Second thing, let me also copy because I want to manage the existing resource that is storage account. Let me copy this also. This is the format. Now once I copy this thing, let me bring it here. Then I need to modify here. What I need to change here now, this all remains same. This name I need to change like subscription till here. Sorry, right here. I need to copy and wherever I can see here, right, till subscription here. Remove this one. Once I remove, that means what I'm replacing it. Now here, how do I get this ID? This ID, you will get it. Basically, this is a resource type and this is a local name, right? Local name, how do you get? Local name, you will get it in your, as I told you, you first need to write a Terraform script, right? Let's say in our case, we have written the Terraform script. This is the Terraform script, let's say. I can simply call with this name, Azure RM storage account, then whatever the local name, then that's it. Sorry, dot name. Once I do, once I copy this thing, once I copy everything, once you do in Terraform here, enter here, the state file will be updated for you for your existing resource. Okay, that's how way to check it. So in my case, I don't have to do it right now. Okay, we can ignore that one. Okay, next questions about uh, Terraform state file security. Your team stores Terraform state file in blob, but an auditor raised concerns about sensitive data exposure. How can you ensure Terraform state file in Azure DevOps pipeline? That means we all know, right? So we are using the state file to store our sensitive information such as state file. So normally, if you're using in DevOps practice, we should be careful enough to basically see how we can secure our sensitive information, right? So what is the best way to basically deal with these requirements? So the first thing is that we need to in the blob storage. Let's say storage account has a blob storage, right? Let's say we are talking about one of the blob. Let's say if you go to the blob, is where you store the state file, right? Sorry, not blob, it is blob. Sorry, container. Okay, under containers, this is let's say container we have. Let's say this is a backup container. Inside here is what we store the state file, right? Normally, but as I told you, we have not configured the backends right now. This is the reason you cannot see. So here there is an option. So if you see here, I am. This is on the on the blob level, not on your storage account level. Okay, blob level. If you go there, you can assign. So if you go here, role assignments, you can see what role basically this particular has. If you see this all owner, this is all default, right? You can see from where this is coming. This is all coming from the subscription level, right? And some of them are from management level. But you can see like what permission is granted for this particular decision like that. So, but in your case, if you at all want to define based on your requirement, maybe you can go here, then you can assign it. But as I told you, this normally we don't do it through portal. It should be done through Terraform. But I'm just making sure that you understand the concept. That is the reason why I'm showing you. Okay. So yeah, you can do this one. Then you can whatever you can say. Blob storage. If you see here, maybe you can choose this one. Blob storage blob data contributor. That means you don't have the complete access to the storage account. Only the like what you need for certain like your requirement according to your role, those access will be granted. You can see here, allow for it, write and delete access to the storage account blob container and data. That means container level. It is not mentioned as storage account level. It is in blob level. Okay, that's how we have to go. But if you want to give on the blob level, yes, of course, then you can choose maybe if you want to have much more advanced, in a sense, higher permissions, then you can go with a contributor. Right, contributor I can give. Maybe I need to select privilege. This will be under privilege. Okay. This is because contributor means mostly this will be on the it has a high privilege. Now if you can see here, contributor I can give, but this time it will be privilege administrator role. This is more of administration role. That means it can have a much bigger role access, I mean to say. Now you can see everything they can assign. Okay, all right. Now we understood this thing. Then as I told you, we can give this encryption also. Now we can also give RBAC role. In RBAC role depends on the requirement or maybe contributor, whatever role I have already shown, right? So you can decide. This again depends on the project that you can take a decisions. And also enable the state file locking state. So why we are using this one? State locking is because if you remember, if you don't have this state locking concept or maybe this thing mechanism, somebody can basically do something. Let's say currently I'm working on Terraform. If I while running this Terraform apply or anything, somebody can be applied some other this thing, right? Like maybe while applying, somebody might have destroyed. Then it will be conflict, right? So to avoid such situations, to disrupt the state file, we have a features called or mechanism called as state locking. So if one particular person, let's say I'm the only person now, let's say I have run the Terraform apply, unless I finish my tasks, that means once I complete my Terraform commands successfully run, then only other person can execute the commands. Okay, that is the good reason. And also we can use because as they are talking about the state file, I mean secure our security related things. So we need to think how we can store the like key also, maybe password or any other this thing. So you can see here, use Azure Key Vault for storing Terraform secrets instead of exposing them in the state file. So even the Azure Key Vault has the capability, basically, we all know, right? Azure Key Vault basically mean for storing your secrets, your certificates, and also your any kind of sensitive information, right? So this is where we can store it. So that is a managed service by Azure. So we can have that one. And we can also use a Terraform output JSONs to avoid exposing sensitive variable by output. So there is another way we can use the JSONs, but I don't see much things people are using. Mostly you can go with these concepts. Okay, this thing you don't need to this thing. This is hardly use it. I don't see much using, but you can go with this. Mostly you can go with this focus. Okay. Okay. Now next questions is Terraform state file corruption recovery. Now, a Terraform state file in Azure storage gets corrupted due to the accidental modification. As I told you, modification, if two person at the same time try to modify something, let's say one person try to destroy, another person try to apply. That means the Terraform would conflict which one to accept or not. If two commands running together parallelly, right? So to avoid this one, that is where we introduce the state file locking option mechanism, right? But imagine now there could be any other reason, could be the state file what we have, let's say we have the state file here, right? Somebody might have modified manually. As I told you last time also, normally if this state file is very sensitive, this is your metadata. You should not do any manual modification here. Everything has to be done through the commands itself. You do not do any changes in your state file manually. Okay. So in this case, how do you recover from a corrupted state file? Terraform state file asking. Now it is asking basically how we can recover in this situation, right? So as I told you, in state file, there is a blob versioning. Is enabled restore previous state version. That means I will not do that, but I can show you what I mean to say that. If you go to storage account, let me try to create. I'm not going to create, but then I just wanted to show you. Let me go to the maybe data protection. Now, if you come down, there is an option. Can you see your enable versioning for blob? Use versioning to automatically maintain previous version of your blob. That means it also has a mechanism. Basically, the storage account has a mechanism to basically track if there is for every single changes. That means let's say today I might have done something in the storage account. In the next day, some other person might have done something on the data, let's say blob level, something, right? So every single changes that you are making in your storage account, that can be tracked. So that is what they mentioned. Some same thing when it comes to the state file also, right? That is a backend state file. We can basically enable this one. That means, as I told you, under blob, let me show you basically under, yeah, let's say container. Let's say this is the backup. Under here, let's say I have a terraform.tf state file. Let's say, okay, I don't have here because I have not configured it. But let's say in my case, it is there now. So what we can do is, if you want to enable this thing for every single changes, you can basically have the option. Let's say right now I don't have anything. Maybe let me upload something. From blob. Okay, no problem. I don't have to leave it. I think I'm not required for now. Maybe just random things. I don't know what I'm going to upload, but yeah. let's say anything. Let's say this is the Terraform related. Let's say, okay. Oh my God, I just file. Let's say Terraform.txt. Just imagine now this it is I'm just this should not be done, but I'm just showing just for the sake of this thing. Let's say, as I told you, we have not configured the backend. That is why I don't see here. But yeah, just to show you. Now let's say once I upload. Now you see here, every single time there is a census ID get created. And let's say if you run today, tomorrow, every single Terraform, whenever you run the Terraform plan or apply anything, the state file gets updated, right? The more the state file gets updated, that time whenever you're running the Terraform, it will get updated date also, modification date. So let's say today having some issue, then you can revert back to the previous state. That means yesterday or maybe early morning. That way we can also possibly we can do that also. Okay. Okay, then yeah, then that is the thing. First thing, we can enable the versioning as I shown you also. Then second is the backup. Basically we have to back up the state file, this thing. So if you remember, as I told you, whenever you have this thing, right, terraform.tf state. So whenever you destroy the resource for any reason, let's say, there will be one more extension with the dot backup at last. So this you can take the backup of that. From there you can restore it. That is another way, basically, in order to use that one. So if you see here, now we have all that metadata for your existing resource. Let's say all the resource, whatever resource I have now, let's say once you destroy, this same state file will be taken as a backup with the extension of dot backup. And whatever you have the existing terraform.tf state will be updated with the basically all the resource whatever you, because once you delete mean everything will be gone, right? It will go everything way, so it will be mentioned as a null. I mean, that means nothing value will be updated, but then in your dot backup extensions, all the state file whatever you have previously, those information will be updated over there. Okay, now okay, now let's come to the next. Okay, now Terraform workflow. We all know, right? Your team wants to automate pipeline deployment using Azure DevOps pipeline. How do you integrate Terraform into Azure DevOps CI/CD pipeline? So it is asking in order to deploy, in order to integrate your Terraform with Azure DevOps, how can you make use of pipeline basically? So first thing, define Terraform steps in Azure pipeline, YAML pipeline, Azure DevOps YAML pipeline. So as we all know, in Azure we have a pipeline. So that is where we have defined, that is in the YAML pipeline. That is where we define all the Terraform steps, right? Depends on the requirements. So we can define it. Example, you can see this task. This will be the first step that you will be mentioning. Not only with this one. So here first thing, we need to initialize the Terraform, right? So this is this thing. You can see the comments, then backends to authenticate. Then we have a what is a resource group, the storage account, then container name, and the backend Azure key. These all backend details basically. First, whenever I run Terraform init for the first time in the backend Terraform, I mean using DevOps, I need to configure this first in place. So if I talk about the real time, maybe this is the pipeline that I'm using it right now. You can see we have it under pipelines, right? Maybe let me check. Yeah, under pipelines we have a commons. Under commons we have a terraform.yaml. Terraform.yaml basically defines all the Terraform related commands in order to execute successfully your Terraform commands. I mean, in the sense, deploy your infrastructure. So example, you can see here, this is basically we have parameterized, and you can see these jobs be given as a Terraform jobs and whatever parameters, and they will check out, and then they will install the Terraform. They'll get the latest Terraform, then they will actually initialize the Terraform. Now there is another way. If you check this version, maybe How do we get this one? Maybe if you simply Google it also, you can check, right? So if you just Google this is a task number, you can check Azure DevOps pipeline task. This basically, if I define as this thing, this is used for the Azure pipeline Terraform task. If you click over there, what happened? Or maybe I don't know what happened. Okay, now you can see here, right? This is we need to, this is basically the extensions. That's where we need to install it. Now we can see exactly what we can do here, different commands, right? This is basically tasks within this thing we can define, if you see. Okay, so there will be others also. The Terraform 5 also is there, 1 also is there, depends on the this thing, it will be changed, but understand in the high level now. Yeah, then we will configure the what will be the service connection name. This is the service connection. And then what is the resource group? Service connection, we know, right? It has to authenticate Azure DevOps with your what do you call Azure DevOps with your storage, basically Azure DevOps account with the Azure service. They have to communicate. Okay, now through Terraform basically. Now you can see this is the backends. Backends basically this is your storage account details and the container name, then key. Once you give this only, or like whatever steps are shared here, like each and every single steps is defined here, right? For every single steps, that means first what it'll do. Let me take. First it will go and initialize the backends as part of the configurations what it defined here. After validation, then there is a condition validation step. So if this validation, this based on the parameters, they will check commands to validate this thing. Okay, to validate also, then they will try to validate. Then there is also conditions. Agar if the plan that under here parameters we have a Terraform.actions. If that is a plan in this case, then to run the this plan, that is a command given as a plan. You don't have to give a Terraform plan, you just give a plan, because we define as a Azure RM provider, and we know task defined as a Azure, Terraform task 04, Terraform task v4b. Then to apply also, there is also one more condition based on that. If this condition is matching, that is a apply, then you run these commands like that. So each this thing, there is a condition defined. Then also backends, as we all know, we have to get the files also, like TFVers file. We are not passing the value directly right in the variable. So we are passing value somewhere in our locations, a certain location, right? So maybe if you can come here and the environments, let's say under dev, we have a, this is only for the development related, all your Terraform, TFVers file are stored here. Okay, that's how they can pass it. Okay, then that is same thing, that is for apply also same thing. That's how we have to define it. But this is the Terraform steps, but actual pipeline is here. Now whatever steps you're given, this is basically, if you check, it will get triggered particular branch, and default pool name is that pool name. That means what is a pool, as in pool they are going to use, that is as in a default one. And I have set some environment so that based on the requirement in which environment I want to deploy this resource, I can deploy accordingly. And then this is a basically parameters, whether you want to validate and plan, or apply and plan, or maybe apply or destroy. It depends on your requirement, what you want to do with Terraform script in the sense first when you run. Now this is the stage defined here. Under stages, we given the stage, in the case it is a Terraform, and then we have a display name according to that parameters conditionally. And there is a condition to always jobs template. Templates basically why we are using it. If you remember in here Terraform.yaml, we have so much big script, right? For us, if you have like some other tasks also, this is only for the Terraform related. Let's say you have some other tasks also, that is quite difficult for you to basically define in the pipeline, right? It is possible to write in the pipeline itself directly, but then doesn't make sense because it is not that what is it, user friendly, right? So this is the reason why we are using a template here. if you see here, under here, we have a template. Template in my case, I want to use what? Whatever Terraform.yaml. Terraform.yaml means this one, right? Sorry, here. That means whatever steps is there, they will fetch and execute it accordingly. And then according to the environment that you define. And there is a somebody need to basically review the Terraform apply also before applying it, so that they know whether whatever you're doing is correct or not. Okay, that's why we need to define it. Okay, I think I went too deep. Okay, let's go back. Okay, that's the thing. Then we have a, this is very common. This in interview, this is a thing we can mention, like include steps, the Terraform plan, apply. As I mentioned, everything I shown in the core also, right? That you can define. The next question is, when is the Terraform state file created? You might be thinking, right, state file, we have a Terraform state file. But question is, when do normally get created this state file? The scenario can be anything. Let's say in our case, a junior engineer asks, when Terraform creates the state file during automations, when does the Terraform create or modify the state file? That means when exactly the Terraform state file modify or gets created. So we need to understand here. The first thing, Terraform creates .tf state file only after successful Terraform apply. We have already discussed, right? So Terraform state file basically gets created only when you successfully deploy your resources. That is using Terraform apply. Next, another situation, if using a remote backends carefully, remote backend means just like how we are using this thing. Terraform state file, so the state is initialized with Terraform init. It is not getting created. The state file with the same name will be created. That means if you're using the backends mean, let me maybe show you that also in the high level. I can configure, let me show you in the code level. Let's say I have a provider here, and the provider I enable right now, I have disabled it right in my case. Let's say if I enable this thing, let me comment it, right? And now I'm telling Terraform to use the backends, that is Azure provider backends. Now, once I enable, question is we need to store the state file, right? That is a terraform.tf state file. Where exactly am I going to store? You have simply mentioned that to use it, but where is the storage account? How can Terraform understand the storage account to use? Which storage account to use, right? It's quite difficult. But then how they will understand and use it? So let us understand that. So first thing, on the provider, you can enable here. Then the actual value you're not passing. You're simply telling Terraform to use the Azure backend. That's it. But then you are not defining the which storage account to use it. So where can we define then? Let's see that. So once I enable this one, first thing you should have the storage account created in advance, maybe through Terraform or manually. It depends on your requirement. I mean, project to project. Normally they will create, but state file would not have access to everybody. Only certain person would have access to the state file. Now, the question is, how can we configure? Now, if you go to DevOps portal, let me take you to the DevOps portal. Maybe I need to log in back to my Chrome. It's better, I think. Because I usually log in here, so it will take me. Okay, so once I log into my DevOps portal, this is my DevOps portal, right? So as you can see, dev.azure.com. So here, there is an option called under pipeline. Where is pipeline? Under pipeline, let me click pipelines. Under pipeline. Why is taking time? I don't understand. Okay, I will take some other organizations. Maybe, I don't know why it's taking time. Oh my God, okay. Maybe because of that, it's taking time. 32. Okay, as you can see right now, we have logged into our DevOps portal. So what we need to understand, as I told you, to how we can configure the backend. So let me go one of the random organizations, and on that one project, that is Agile project. If you go to pipelines, there is an option called library, right? Click over there under pipeline library. As you click there, you need to configure like this backends. In backends you can configure as, so this is basically something called as a variable groups. What is variable groups? Variable groups is nothing but having one or more what is it, variables. That means if you have more than one variables you want to manage as a group of variables, then we can define the group variable group, and this is the name of the variable group. Inside here I can have a list of variable name. Let's say I can have like as I mentioned, this is the variable group name I given, and then I can call with the, I can define the variable name. Let's say this is for the backends Azure RM container name. This is the whatever container name for the storage account. This is the backend as a key. Key means that is a state file key name. This is group name. This is a backend. This is group, and this is the storage account name, like that. And this is a service connection. This is optional. You can this thing. Okay. You might be thinking, why am I using the backend every time? Yes, of course, we need to use the backends because it has certain what I call structure. You cannot simply use the Terraform storage account or whatever. You have to follow certain standard. Like you cannot just copy. You cannot use anything that you want. There will be some parameters that you have to follow the same syntax or format. Okay. So once you, if you want to call these informations, I simply use the variable group, not with the name. So now that is why I can see. Now, if you go back here, now if you want to, let's say, just example, if you want to use a variable group, you can simply use your example like that. You can, one minute, not here. It's taking other value actually. Okay, I think it is. Okay, I don't need to change anything. No, I don't need changes. I will execute. I mean, I will skip that one. Where is there? Yeah, here. Now, if you see here, we can have it, right? So I will show you how we can define. If you go, there is a call under that, there is a pipeline variable, right? You can define here. So here we need to define. Now, if you see here, variables are given, and that is a group name, right? Group name I given this name, right? Now, if you go back with this copy, let me copy. Here it is, right? So you can just first, right? So which one? That means now you see how it is interconnected. So it has a separate value. You have to pass it in your variable file. So if you don't want to pass separate like this in your test cases, maybe you don't need to define this way. Maybe you can do other way. Like you can see here backend configuration also. What is the value? This is another way of defining. So it depends on your requirement, how you want that to be. Now, if you see here, there's nothing hardcode value. Everything is a like you do not see any hardcode value, right? Like what is the actual storage account? Because this way everything is defined where it is defined. Sorry, where is my, yeah, it is defined here, but this one, this is secretly you cannot see the value. Now there is an option also. If you see here, change variable type to secrets. So if you mention as secret, that means other cannot see anything. Now if you want to again change to the plain text, I can change it again. So this is one of the very advantage of using the variables group within your pipelines in Azure. Okay. Now, as I told you, similar way you can do. If you want to store the certificate or any other, same way you can do it. Now, because everybody would not have access in the pipeline, only the certain user, person who has a responsibility to work in the project, those person would have access to this pipeline. Not everything, right? So, all right, let's go. You understood. That's how we can define. So that's how we can define the variable group and we can use it in the pipeline. That's how it can authenticate. That is why we have not passed actual value. We have not passed the actual value where in your providers, right? In value, I have not passed it because I don't want to define any hardcode value. That is the best practices. In the real time, this is the exactly how in the real time also will be using. All right, let's go next. Still file. Okay, backends we are done. If using backends, right? So whenever we are using a backends for the first time, only the state file will be initialized. The state file will be initialized. That's it. It will be without any data. Okay. And during plan, Terraform reads, when you run the Terraform plan, basically what happens, Terraform reads the state file to communicate, to compute the infrastructure difference, as I mentioned. So they will check once you this thing, they will check the state file to compare with your existing infrastructure. Whatever changes is there, they will tell you that. Then Terraform apply. Terraform apply update basically Terraform here in Terraform apply during apply Terraform updates the Terraform updates the state file with the latest known as Terraform state Terraform. This actually not here maybe. Okay. No state. So every single Terraform apply, if it is already created the state file, they whatever changes is there, those changes will be updated in your Terraform state file. Okay. So in the high level, I can mention this one. Let's go. Maybe we'll complete 10 questions. Okay. Then we have Terraform's workspace and multi-environment deployments. Now, you need to deploy resource across dev, QA, and production, but without maintaining separate configurations. What it means is that now let's say I have only one configuration that is under modules. I have the network, I have the resource group, storage account, virtual machines, right? I have everything now. Now, let's say same resource, I want to deploy into the different environment. One is your dev environment, and maybe second is staging or maybe productions, right? So how can we deploy into the multiple environment with the help of one configuration? One configuration in the sense one Terraform configuration. That means this is only one configuration. That means I should not be having separate configuration for the dev, separate configuration for the, let's say, QA, separate configuration for the production. I don't want to have that one. So what we can do is, so we have discussed, right, already. So that is where we can discuss, I mean, we can introduce about Terraform workspace. So the question also asks about focused on the workspace. How do you how do Terraform workspace help in multiple environment setups? So as I mentioned, they want to deploy the multiple environment. How this Terraform workspace can help you in setting up the environment, multiple environment. So we have already discussed this also, but let's discuss still in the high level. So Terraform Workspace allows different environment deployment using the same configuration. Same configuration as I mentioned. Well, it doesn't matter whether it is a dev or QA or maybe production, right? Your configuration, the Terraform code remains as one, but then only you will have a value will be changed for each environment. Value means let's say storage account name, storage account resource group, or maybe VM name or any other information, right? Those value will be changed based on the environment, but the configuration remains same. So yeah, so what we can do here, Terraform Workspace allow different environment deployment using the same configuration. That's what we discussed. To set up using Workspace, what we can do is Terraform initialize multiple workspace. Terraform Workspace dev new means you are basically creating dev, then Terraform Workspace dev new and prod like that. Depends on the prod and non-prod like that. So then once you create the namespace and use a condition resource creation based on the namespace workspace, you can create the condition also. Depends on the workspace, the resource will be created into the certain environment. So maybe I'll just give you on the high level. Maybe before that, now if I say here Terraform workspace list, right? LS or LS, I think LS it work. Yeah, LS or list both works fine. Okay. Now as I mentioned, so if you can type ls or list also, both works fine. Now if I type this command to check all the list, now you can see if you want to basically you can see the global option, right? So if you want to create new one, you can use a new. If you want to list all workspace, you can create as list, sorry, define as list. And if you want to show, you can if you want to see, you can select as show, select and everything. Select when you want to select the particular workspace. And if you want to delete, you can use the delete arguments. Okay, there is also given definition. Delete when you want to delete everything given. So based on that, you can follow. Let's say if I want to create new one, just for the sake of understanding, I can give a tab. Let's say, sorry, new. What is the name of this thing? I can give as a deb. Deb is your workspace name. Workspace. Now, if you think, now you can see here, workspace got created. Now you can see the state file also get this thing changed. Now, basically, where is that? Yeah, here, right? Now, if you come in here, now it is switched to here. Now, if you type here, Terraform workspace, so basically we'll show the basically the current one. Current one means this is the current workspace we are using, just like a Git branch. So similar way we can do it. If you want to switch to the different workspace, then maybe you can select what is the workspace name. If you know the workspace, you can select. Otherwise, maybe I don't know if that works. Maybe default. There's a one, right? FAULT default. Yeah, it's switch a default. Now default mean by default, if you do not create any workspace, there is a workspace by default gets created with the same name default. Now if you type the same comments as before, I want to see the current workspace. Now I can say as default. Now if you want to delete the existing workspace that we created recently, maybe we can just use a delete option. How can we do that? Workspace delete, delete. Then what is the name be given? Okay, no works dev dot workspace. Okay, sorry. Workspace. So as you can see, it has got deleted. Okay, that's how we try to explore this also once. So that's one way. This is one way of doing it. So while creation also, if you see here, I can mention here, while creating the based in the workspace, you can define if you now, if you switch to the particular workspace, let's say automatically Terraform will understand which workspace you're okay, because this is a one variables I have defined it. So first name would be app, and it will be Terraform workspace, whatever workspace. Let's say if you are switching to the dev environment, it will be dev. If it is a production, it will be production or prod, and at last it will be a BM, like that will be created based on that. And then I don't have to create a Terraform file for each environment. Users work based on the environment. Another way of doing when comes to real time, this one way of using Azure workspace, right? Second way we can do it. Let's say we have one configurations as I'm into the right now. Let me check where I'm sitting currently. Maybe I'm into the default. Okay, I'm into default now. Let's say I want to deploy to respective environment. So what we can do, we can pass the value, basically whatever value. Let's say this is for the default one. Now, if you want to pass for the dev environment, means I need to have all the value related to your dev environment. For production, mean I would have to have one separate .tf, not this one. My bad. Okay, this one. Terraform.tf states would be different, but I cannot use the same name as it is. I cannot use the Terraform.tf words file. Rather, I can use Terraform maybe environment name, let's say dev.tfvars, something like that. I can use it because if I try to use a terraform.tfvars, what happens is automatically Terraform will try to override your existing variables. What I mean is that now let's talk about one of the example. Let's say this variable I have this all the variable for a storage account, right? Whatever variable is there, you do not see the actual value, right? You do not see any actual value, but if required, you can actually pass the actual value in your variables.tf also, no issue. But then what is the point of using defining there? That is the reason why we have not defined it, because these variables can be overwritten with the help of .tfvars file. So wherever you see anything .tfvars, they will always try to override the value, whatever value you define. Right now, no value, only I'm passing the data, right? So because data need to be passed, then only Terraform would understand what value to be, basically what data to be considered. So I have not passed the value, but if you at all want, you can define a value. How can I define? If I say example like there, you can, there is an option, a default. Now you can define the value, location like this, let's say east to yes. Same thing. I can define the name, something like that I can define. But as I told you, this does not make sense for us to keep here the value here, because anyway, we are going to be use every single environment, right? Not only one environment. So what is the point of defining in the environment? We are wasting our time also, energy also, right? That is the reason we are not keeping any default value in the variable file. So what we are doing instead, we are simply passing the Terraform, I mean, what you call Terraform variables type, data type, and passing the actual value. Okay, that is why. But if you keep with this name, Terraform.tf bars, whatever existing variables.tf file is there, no, those value will be overwritten with this value. But imagine now, this is only for one. But as I told you, TF verse, I will not just have one TF verse. Let's say I would have a TF verse for each environment. One is for the dev environment, second is the QA, third is the production. That means what I do, same like this one, I will have two more TFVers file with the environment specific. That means right now you can see here one, right? This is a default. So this is a default behavior. If you don't have any other TFVers file by default, this value will be picked up value. Now in another way, let me give an example. Let me copy same thing. Not copy, maybe I will just create a new file, maybe. Uh, mm, mm, mm. Okay, let me create one more file. I just want to make sure that you understand. Now let's say Terraform dot let's say one dot tfvers. Imagine now, okay, maybe this one I'll change to dev, let's say. Now if you can carefully look carefully, let's say right now I don't have value. Let's say I have a value here also right now. In my case, it is not there, but though consider that we have a value defined in our dev.terraform.tfvers also. Now, if you run the Terraform plan, what do you think? Which value will be picked up? Terraform.tf star or Terraform.dev.tfvers? What do you think? This one, right? Terraform.tfvers or the Terraform.dev.tfvers. Which value will be picked up by default in the same directory? Of course, by default, if you do not mention, you just mention the extension of terraform.tfvers means this will be the first priority. That means this value will be picked up. This will be overwritten the value from your existing variables file. That is a variables.tfvers file. They will take the value. They will pass the what is it? Override the existing value basically here, but not with not here, not with this one. Why it is not this one? Because Terraform still would first check with this thing. If you want to write with this thing, then you have to, if you want to explicitly mention based on the environment, then you have to design your pipeline in such a way that if this is the environment, you have to pick this particular TFVers file. If this is if, let's say if it is a production main, you have to take the production TFVers file. You have to explicitly define in your YAML file. Okay, this here case you don't need to define here because this is a default behavior. If you don't define also, Terraform still will try to pick up from the same directory because all the codes are located here. But if you keep your value also in the same line, same location also, Terraform cannot understand that. Terraform will not at all take this one. This is the reason why I'm trying to make you understand. Okay, let me delete this one now. Now, okay, now where is that? Okay, this is the reason why if you can take a look closely under pipelines, I have an environment. Under environment, I have a different environment. Let's say dev environment or production or staging, right? Why am I doing this one? So I need to structure this way so that Terraform would understand which particular TFVers to be used for while running the Terraform. This is the reason why I have structured it. Let's say dev means you can see this is all related to your dev environment related variable file. Same way, this is a configuration file. This is about all related to your dev environment TFVers file. Same way, if you go to let's say other environment dev I've done, let's say productions, production related, let's say has a different parameters in the sense different variables. Same thing TFVers, because each environment would have a different configuration, right? That you can define. That's how we should use it. Okay, so question is how can be enabled, how can be defined? So I have defined it, but still where do I need to define that one? So if you go here in your commands, there is a pipeline, and the pipeline YAML, right? For this one, you have to change for each environment. Now, this is the reason why I was saying you to define here, let's say, where is that? Templates. Okay, this is the one. We have to go to yeah, here, right here. I have given all the steps here, but then while taking the value, which value to take, this one I mean to say, okay, which value to take, you need to define here. If you go to the pipelines, there is a concept things you can see. Pipeline, this location, I have to take it under here. And which TFVers, this all we have parameterized. If you want to see more details, maybe I can still show you. Let me go to the environment dev. Let's say I have the pipelines. You can see pipeline related things environment TFVers. This is a dev environment, right? I'm passing here value. Same thing for the then Terraform dot TFVers location. So variables, all the pipeline from where the values need to be picked. So everything is defined here. For each environment need to organize this way. Then only your pipeline can work according to your expression. This way also we can use it. But this is the real time. That's how we should be use it. But the one what we were discussing here, a small project and all, we can go with this also. Okay. Okay. Now, next 3 questions, we'll cover it then. Terraform provisioners and metadata. Meta argument, I mean. You need to configure as your VM after provisioning using Terraform. How do you use Terraform provisioners to execute push deployment scripts? That means, as we all know, right, provisioner something can help us to provision certain, let's say maybe run some commands, or maybe you want to provision some tools or anything after or before creation of resources, or in our case, it is a VM. So how can we do that? So first thing, this thing we can use a remote execute provision for automation. Remote execute, why we have to use is because Once your resource is created, that is a VM, right? Virtual machines. Then to run certain script remotely, I'm saying not locally, remotely. So this particular resource, that is your um, resource execute this thing exec provisioner can help us to define the script according to the your requirement, whether you want to run PowerShell script or Bash script or Python script. As long as it is your code is correct, it should be working fine for specific tasks. And depends on the task, which script to use, that you have to identify. So then second thing, in order to run this script also, because this is running in the remotely, right, we need to have the SSH connections. Why SSH connection? Because without having the SSH connection, I don't think so we can access to any of the resources, right, or VMs. In our case, let's say Linux case means if it is a Windows case, it will be RDP connections, as simple. So as we are talking about the VM, let's say we have created the VMs with the Azure RM, Linux virtual machines and local name. I given this name. And if you see the authentication password, uh, disable password authentication. With password, you cannot authenticate. And you can see the admin SSH key. We have given username and the public key. Public key, this is also, if you see here, there is something called a file. File, this, what is this actually? This is known as a function in Terraform. What is function? Function basically to manipulate something in your Terraform code to do something, right? That means I want to execute, I want to basically log into the server with this thing, username, but then password is something, it is not defined here. But then we have something called as a private key and public key that need to be created, right? So let's, in our case, we have a public key created in advance already in particular locations. So this file function, if you see that this basically of Terraform file function, um, let me check. Okay, now if you see the file function, but the file reads the content of, file reads the contents of a file at a given part and returns them as a string. That means this is why we use this function. That means because in our certificate, sorry, in our where is that? Sorry, my bad. Here, right here, if you see here under file, we have this under dot pop, right? We have public key, basically we have all the certificate things. So this, they have to read this one and the return with the value. So that once they read, then only they can authenticate, right? Without accessing the, having the certificate or maybe this thing, they can access it, right? So this is what reason why they are we are using the function, this thing, Terraform functions here. Example, they have given example also. If you want to write here, if something under here, hello world, some text, whatever text is given inside there here, the output will be coming like this. That is why same way when coming to the SSH key also, under file we have the public key. Whatever public key is there, the actual value will be extracted here, but it will not be visible to anybody because they can just read it. Okay, it is not going to extract it. In fact, it is just going to read that one so that they can authenticate. Then we have a use file provisioner for large script. Why we using file provisioners? If you see here, because if you have a big script, that is not, it is difficult for you to define all the script, all the steps within your the file, right? I mean within your Terraform code, right? So what you do, you can create one file with the extension of .sh, and you can define all the instructions, in the sense all the commands that you want to run within your script. Then where you want to move that one, so destination is something you can select in this particular home directory, this particular user, here you are moving it. Then once it is moved, we have a what I call provisioners. Here remove exec is something that inline. Now we can give a permission. Basically, we need to give permission to the particular SSS file, right? So this is why we are giving the file permissions in this particular file, and then they are going to whatever they are going to install this thing under SSS. There is a script, right? You have defined, so they are going to install it. So that's how we can do it. Okay. So you can go through if you want once again. Then ensure post deployment configuration tasks run automatically after Terraform execution. So they will execute everything. Then whatever you have defined a script, it will be up and running then. Okay. Okay. Next, Terraform dynamic block and functions. You need to create multiple network security group roles dynamically. How do you use dynamic blocks for energy roles? So energy roles we all know, right? This is basic. I given the example configuration here. So this one I created as you can see here. So normally for every single resource, when whatever we are doing, okay, I'm sorry, my bad. Let me first destroy my resource. Otherwise, I'll be charging it for them. Terraform destroy. Auto approve. Did I type something wrong? Auto, not auto. Oh, did I delete it already? Okay. I don't remember if I have deleted. No, I haven't deleted. Okay, I have not deleted, but why is showing like this? Maybe workspace name we have. Yeah, Melanie.
No, did you apply the Terraform apply?
Yes, it is applied. Okay. You can see, right? So many resources got created.
Okay.
If you see, no, maybe I'm guessing it. B space this many resources got created. Storage second everything. Maybe what I'm thinking. Let me check the this thing. Terraform workspace list. I'm into default. So if I'm into default, why I'm not able to delete it? Destroy. You're correct. I might have destroyed what then. Okay, maybe let me refresh the page. I don't remember. Oh, I think this is group. Okay. You know why? There is a backends I have configured, but I have not configured actually this thing. That is why they're trying to check the state file. So let me comment this one. I don't need for now. Save it. Now maybe let me run. Maybe when I do destroy complete something. The workspace maybe yeah I got a workspace. We changed the workspace, right? I don't remember what workspace we were using before. That is a thing. Workspace we are into two different workspace, right? We use it. So maybe change it. So I have destroyed the workspace. Maybe because of that, I was using the state file into different locations. So anyway, I will delete this manually, not an issue. That is why carefully to do. State file is very important. If you don't have the state file, then manage it again. Okay, anyway, let's go to the next questions. Yeah, so they're asking to basically create multiple network security role dynamically, so that based on the requirement, we can have a n number of network security group and then do it. So this is what we do. So first what we do, first we are going to create the storage account, network security group name. In the sense network security group, whatever name is there. Here, under here, we use a dynamic. Under dynamic, if you see here, security role. Under dynamic is where you have defined logically you are using some conditions here. Condition in the sense, dynamic way, that is a map we have to use here. This is all variable. With this variable, you have to define all the, you have to define as a map of object. Then only you can pass the value. And but then whenever you're using the energy, specifically if you're using dynamic, first you should start with the dynamic, and then whatever the role name you have to define, and whatever the for each you have to use under here again, and then you have to call with the energy role name, then automatically it will pass it. Example, if you see here the screenshot, this is the variable. Now if you see this one variable name I given as a network, sorry, energy role, right? Here I given as a map of object. It is not an object, it is map of object because I have more than one properties, right? If I have only one attributes, then I can use a object maybe. But in our case, as I told, we can have n number of rules, right? Network security rule. This is the reason why I will be using a map of object. That means for each object can map together and give you the, map them accordingly. Now, for each object can have a priority, directions, access, protocol, source, and port, everything. We have it that one. So this all we need to define a data type also. So then default here, as I told you, this value is passed within the variables, but as I told you, this can be passed in a tier bars file also. So you can copy paste this thing and pass in a tier bars also. But what you need to notice here is that now if you see here, the first thing, this is our allow SSS. This is about the to allow the SSS. That is a priority as 100, and direction is the inbound. Access is allowed. You want to allow. Protocol is a TCP, and the source port is any. Normally, in the real time, you will not use as any. It will be depends on the projects. Okay, you can give some IP range for that. And destination port, as we all know, SSS works on port 80. Sorry, 18. 28. 22. Okay, and then next we have a source address. This all can be changed according to requirement. Same way we have another this thing. I can give this port. Same way, now let's say you have want to enable for the RDP. What you need here is just come in the TFVars file or maybe variables file. In this case it will be variable, but in the real time case, as I told you, you will be defining in the TFVars file same data only. So inside this line under blue color there is no curly braces, close bracket. Just enter below, just below there, and you copy paste everything and only change the name and whatever you want to give the value. Then your work is good. Automatically the rule will be added for you. You don't have to create a separate network security rule or maybe NSG for that. That is much easier to manage also. That's how in the real time also we will be using it. Then allows a scalable energy role creation without hard coding multiple security roles, as we told. So that's how we need to know. Then I think this is the, okay, we have two more questions. I will one question, I think. Yeah, two more questions will cover. Here we'll try to understand the, as we all know, the right now we were using the resource or everything in the Terraform only, Azure. But even possible we can do in the Terraform Azure, AWS also. So let's understand the scenario. Your company runs workloads across both Azure and AWS, and you need to deploy infrastructure using Terraform across both cloud providers. That means you need to deploy resource in Azure as well as AWS. Now, how do you set up multi-cloud Terraform deployment? That means they're trying to understand you that if you had to deploy the resources into based on the environment, how can you deploy them? So as we all know, this is about the Terraform provider. Provider is something that you would be needing, right? So for every single resource provider. Now this is for AWS. Now if referring the documents, I can simply type Terraform providers. If you go here, now you can see the providers has, as I told you, let me open two tabs. One is for the Azure. Let me open the tab, new tab. This is for Azure. Now this is for the Azure provider, right? Now if you see use provider, you can copy paste everything, right? This is basically, if you see here, this is the required provider. This is the provider, this thing. So in your case, you can copy only this also. So if you see here also, they are copying only this one. The reason why you need to copy this one, why not this one? Can I copy everything together? Yes, you can. But what is the difference between then this one and this one, right? If you carefully read the content, right, this is about the required providers. Required provider means explicitly you are defining the Azure provider with particular source and particular version. Whereas here means it is only defining to use the Azure provider. That's it. It is not nowhere mentioned that what version of the provider to be used right here. So that's the thing. So if you don't define it by default, they'll be using the latest. You can see version is latest version. Every single frequently there is a minor version and major version, the minor version will be created for you. If you see 2 days ago, 8 days ago, 15 days ago, every now and then the new updates would happen there. So this is the reason why it is taking the latest one. But if you don't define as this one also, still Terraform would try to use the latest only. But then situation like let's say you have to define the particular version. Let's say I have it, let's say 4.26.0. If I had to use, then you need to define this one version and this thing. Okay, I have this is clear. Same way, coming to the AWS, if you click here, AWS also have the same similar concept, and you can see like AWS now. And if you click here, see, they also have the same just like Azure. Now, what you see on instead of the Azure, it will be it will be Azure RM, but here Azure AWS. Rest all the depends the source, it remains different. Now you can see the different version, right? Depends on that. And the providers also, as I mentioned, it is cement. That's how we need to understand, right? That means provider is something we need to define it. Then second is once you define the provider for two, now what resource you want to create? Let's say I want to create um, Azure RM, they will by default by understanding this resource block, right? You can see right Azure RM. So they will consider this one. If it is AWS BM or sorry AWS resource type, right? Starting with AWS, so they will go with the AWS provider. Okay, that's how we need to. Then based on the configuration that you define in the code, that will get deployed. It is as simple and allows Terraform to manage a resource across both cloud environments under a single configuration that we can do it. Then the last questions, not the least, across cloud networking with Terraform, your team needs to set up networking between Azure, that is a BNet, and in AWS we have a BPC, virtual private cloud, right? For hybrid cloud connectivity. Now, how do you establish how do you establish cross cloud networking using Terraform? So you want to basically establish communication between Azure network and the AWS network. How can you make use of this thing? So as we all know, when it comes to the basically Azure, first thing we need to do is that we need to create the Azure BNet, something that we know to establish the communication. BNet to BNet happens. In AWS case, it is a AWS. It's a AWS BPC peering. First, we need to establish the communication between two, Azure and AWS by peering. Second, Azure BNet and AWS BPC with the Terraform. That as I mentioned, that is common drive. We need to create it because we are referring to that Terraform in. You have to create it. Now, BNet creation is quite simple, right? Now, if you go, you can refer documents. Maybe if you just refer the BNet, you know already how to create, right? You simply type as your provider name. Sorry, my bad. As your RM virtual network, right? You can see virtual network. You can say virtual network. You can type. They will take you to the official documents actually. So now this is about the creation of the virtual network. So this block you can get it. This block. As I mentioned, this you need to create dynamically, not like hard code value. Okay. Same way for the AWS main, you type AWS BPC BPC Terraform. Now, as you type here, they also have this thing, same as your only, nothing difference. Now you can see here, we need to define a resource, and then Azure, sorry, AWS BPC, whatever name of the local name or the reference name, and what is the CIDR block. Define that one. That's it. Okay, and that's how we can define it in AWS case. So once you define both two, they have to peering. Peering is something you can check it. Maybe if you want to peer, you can type bnet peering. Let's say peering bnet or bottleneck bnet peering in Terraform. There will be so many documents, but yeah, let's see. See, you can basically peer different things, but yeah, we'll just focus on. You can see, right, bnet peering. This is for the Azure. I mean, bnet peering. So there is a resource block for peering also. After creation also, you have to link them together, right? So for linking also has a separate resource. Just like here, linking the two different bnet, we are using a peering option. This is a different resource block. Now, if you see here, you'll get all the, sorry, not this one here. What you need to create, right? Now you have to define here. Basically, this is for Azure side. You give the Azure related. What is the virtual network? This thing ID, and what is a remote? Remote mean that is something you put Azure mean Azure. AWS mean AWS remote. Local and remote, basically we need to give the ID basically here, and also virtual network peering. Example 1, example 2. As I told you, depends on this thing, it will be changed. Basically both side, right? Both side you have to peer. Normally one side if you peer also, that should be fine. You don't need to define source and destination and source not required. One side if you do, once you define, automatically they will be having the communication. Okay. Then you have to set up the VPN because that's a different network, right? So set up the VPN gateway and Azure, sorry, AWS transit gateway for secured peering. So we can use this also. You have to check this one and make use of the BGP routing and system. This is a more advanced, but for now you don't need to. And then we need to do the security rules to allow cloud communication through the NSG and the NACLs, because in Azure case we are using all the traffic through the NSG rule, right? When it comes to the AWS, we are using NACLs, right? Network address. What is the full form? NACLs. I think I forgot that one. Okay, network address. Something. Can somebody tell me the full form? NACLs. Something I forgot. Translator. Something. Let me check. In AWS. Yeah, network address control list. Okay, network address control list. So through that we can access it. Yeah, so that's all. Maybe we will start next week some more because there are many things to cover. But you have to practice, right? So go through his notes, understand the law, like everything. Maybe once you're able to understand, it will be quite easy for you to answer it also. You don't have to remember everything. It is all you need to understand. Okay, the more you understand, you're able to analyze the things, then you can answer in your ways. All right, team. So once again, thank you so much for joining. Maybe again we will connect. Maybe yeah, next week. Sorry, not next week. Next tomorrow maybe. Yeah. Thank you. Have a nice weekend. Take care. Bye bye.